a lot of people across the country don't look at church the same way that they did in decades previous to us. I think it's a really unique opportunity for the Catholic Church in the United States to really be thinking about, well, what does it mean for us to be church?
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SMA Audio Experience Podcast. We are super excited this week because this time we have a guest who is not only from San Diego, who is not only from California, is in the United States, but is in the great city of Chicago. So we're very blessed to have a moment of time from Father Matthew S. O'Donnell. He hails out from the city of Chicago. He's the pastor at St. Columbanus Parish, Catholic parish out there. Father Matt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Awesome. Well, we a little backstory for our listeners. If this is your first episode, welcome. If you're a frequent listener of the SMA Audio Experience Podcast, thanks again for joining in, and we definitely appreciate your attention. The backstory of having Father Matt on is when we were searching for some of the next topics to discuss, one of the things that I was researching on the internet was, hey, why aren't, with that theme of graduation going on, with a lot of our schools and high schools, especially with our Catholic students at all across the United States. One of the things that popped into my mind was, hey, why aren't we hearing about stories of graduation or ordinations of, new priests into our Catholic faith? So that led me to the powerful super search engine of Google to put in a search term of, young Catholic priests. When I did that, Father Matt, on the first 2 pages of the search results, there was some content or media or a news article or something, your name popped up. So that led me to actually do the traditional, do a phone call. I left you a voicemail, and you were so kind to actually, give me a call back to figure out why I was calling. So, for those who haven't met you yet, or those who know you in your parish, can you share a little bit about, who you are, like your origin story, and, how you were as a kid, in relation to the Catholic faith?
Sure. I grew up in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, a suburb called Bridgeview, and my home parish was St. Fabian. And growing up, we actually lived right next door to the church. So when we looked out into our backyard, there was the church. Across the street from us was the rectory. And growing up, my brother and I spent a lot of time over at St. Fabian. Probably growing up too, we weren't always excited about spending so much time over at church. It included many weeknights and weekends of being there because my parents were just very involved in the life of our home parish. But growing up that close to the church and being across the street from the priests who lived in the rectory, we'd shovel their snow, an experience that I'm sure that is not familiar to a lot of people in San Diego, of actually having to do that on a regular basis. But it was just really growing up, being immersed in the life of the parish and seeing firsthand kind of what was going on there. In 2006, my dad was ordained as a deacon for the Archdiocese of Chicago, which was right around the same time that I was discerning my own vocation to the priesthood and entering into our college seminary here in Chicago.
One aspect when I was doing research and just following the news is, are there a lot of parishes, or is there a movement to increase the amount of deacons in Catholic parishes, like say in your city or from any conferences or other priests that you talk to? Is there like an initiative, to kind of grow that? Because they kind of don't get talked about too much, but from any parish that I've been involved with or seen, I see that deacons play such a huge role in the parish. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, here in the Archdiocese of Chicago, we actually have one of the largest, if not the largest in the world, populations of Catholic deacons. I think right now in the Archdiocese, we have over 500 deacons that are serving in ministries, a variety of ministries in parishes, in our pastoral centers, in hospitals, here in the Chicagoland area. And so Chicago is sort of a unique place when it comes to the diaconate community, because they provide such an important ministry to the parishes and to the priests of the archdiocese. I think probably most of our parishes here in Chicago have a deacon, whether they're active or retired, that are able to, really contribute to the life of the community. Each year, we ordain a number of men to the permanent diaconate for Chicago. And so it's one piece I think that makes Chicago truly unique is having so many deacons around. And so, like I said, they do a variety of ministries. Some work in parishes, some are involved in community organizations. Some are just present on Sundays, for worship. But it really is a rich ministry for us here in Chicago.
Amazing.
And I think too, we've had a number of the guys who are ordained they vary in age. And so some of those who are ordained are younger and have, young children and young families, and some are retired or close to retirement. And so that's also, I think, a richness in the diaconate community, that there's such a wide age range, because it brings just a wealth of experience and wisdom to the diaconate community.
I would agree. Here, at the academy, our office manager, her husband is a permanent deacon at one of the local parishes here in San Diego County. Just running into him, reading some of his blog posts, from time to time, and just having deacons also, in our parish at St. Michael Parish here in San Diego. I just see that when I not just doing homilies, but just seeing them, on campus and in the community, to me, I think it's just it's another form of, the Catholic faith in the community, and the ability to kind of spread the support that one, pastor or the associate priest can't do just by themselves. You know what I mean? And I think that's just one of those gems that, if other communities or other cities or parishes don't have, kind of fostering that or growing that culture to encourage more men to go, do that, is a very positive thing, and that was my take on it. But I was really curious to see, and I didn't know that about Chicago. So that's a very interesting fun fact, with that, when it comes to deacons.
Yeah, and I think us having so many deacons, it really is reflective of this culture of vocation that the Archdiocese of Chicago is really committed to, especially under the leadership of Cardinal Blaise Cupich, our Archbishop, to really be talking about vocations as much larger than just, making sure that there's men entering into the seminary to study to be priests for the Archdiocese, but to increase all vocations in the Archdiocese. So putting energy and resources into making sure that married couples and engaged couples have programs in place that will help them to live out that vocation. Recruiting men from all over the Archdiocese of Chicago to really consider living his life as a deacon, and if God's really calling them to that. And I think that's a huge piece that happens in a lot of our parishes, and then a lot of the pastoral ministry of the Archdiocese is really just trying to keep that vocation, that culture of vocations before people.
Nice. That's awesome. Can you share a little bit about, I'm sure you've had experience yourself with, and in your family with, Catholic education. Can you touch on that, how that has, affected, your path, to, in becoming, a pastor of your parish?
Yeah, growing up, my home parish of St. Fabian, we didn't have a Catholic elementary school, but the parish had a very strong religious education program, and still has a strong religious education program. And so for us, every other Saturday morning, for my brother and I, we would be there at CCD, as it was called, and we would have our classes and things like that. And then when it was time for me to go on to high school, I really wanted to go to one of our Catholic high schools on the Southwest side called St. Lawrence High School. And so my parents gave my brother and I both the option if we wanted to go to St. Lawrence or another Catholic school, or if we wanted to go to the local public school. And I think going to St. Lawrence for me was a really great decision. And I'm glad that my parents made all the sacrifices that they had to in order to send me to a Catholic high school. Because the Irish Christian Brothers who run the school, they really instilled in me this sense of service, a sense of community. And a lot of the activities of the school were really focused on how are we giving back to the community. So they worked hard, to provide us a great education and have really good teachers. But then at the same time, there was tons of activities at the school that would allow us to give service. So whether it was tutoring, serving at food pantries, doing activities right at the school to raise money for the local children's hospital. I mean, the brothers were really committed to making sure that when we left St. Lawrence, we left not only as leaders, but as people who understood that because of our faith, we have an obligation to give back to the community. And I think for me, that's been such a great lesson in my life, especially now as I serve as a pastor of a parish that has an elementary school. So we have a school here called Augustus Colton Catholic Academy. And we have around 150 students who are in our school this year. But that's a huge piece of what we try to instill in them here as well, is that coming to a Catholic school is unique. There's something about us that's different. Part of it is trying to feel that we belong to a family. We have school mass every Tuesday morning at 8:30. So reminding the students how important it is for us to pray together as a community, but then also to be involved in the life of our parish community through the many service projects that we offer our students.
That is amazing. And speaking of service, when I was, reading and just educating myself more about your parish and your school, with that background in service, can you share a little bit more about, with your parish, and I'm sure your whole community is involved in it, about like the food banks and what you do, for serving, those in your neighboring community there, like, through those service projects. Can you share a couple of those big projects that I know you guys do that, you're very well known for?
So one of the things that we're probably most well known for in our neighborhood is our food pantry. So we have a food pantry that's been at our parish, operating in our parish for the last 12 or 13 years. And every Wednesday, we're open from 10 till noon, and we serve just 2 zip codes in the city of Chicago. And last year in 2017, through our parish's food pantry, we gave out 2.5 million pounds of food to residents in just these 2 zip codes. And so through our food pantry, we actually end up serving around 15,000 individuals in the course of a year. Each Wednesday, roughly 500 families, 500 individuals representing families, pass through our food pantry line. And then on the third Tuesday of every month, we also do a fresh produce mobile, where we give out fresh produce and breads and things like that to our neighbors. So that is obviously like a huge ministry. We have sometimes up to 40 volunteers here every Wednesday, making sure that it happens. When it's nice out and not snowing outside, we're in the parking lot and set up kind of like a farmer market style where the guests who come through the food pantry actually have the opportunity to choose the food that they want instead of just being given a bag of food. But from the food pantry and really listening to our neighbors and hearing what their needs are, we realized that we also have an obligation, if we're going to do the food pantry, to address some of the root causes of why people need to stand in line to get food. And so we also started last year our community service center, which is an opportunity for us to start offering GED classes, skills training, helping our neighbors write their resumes or print out their resumes, to really help them find ways that they can be more self-sufficient so they don't have to rely on coming to a food pantry. And right now, I'm excited because we're working on drafting a business plan for opening a coffee shop in our neighborhood. And the coffee shop's goal would be to, create jobs here in our neighborhood, but at the same time, create a space for hospitality. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of cities across the country know Chicago because of the headlines of violence that I'm sure a lot of people hear about. And our parish is sort of immersed in one of the neighborhoods in Chicago where we unfortunately, feel the effects of violence on a pretty regular basis. If not daily, definitely on a weekly basis, there's some type of violence that we're engaged with. So the coffee shop would be about making sure that we provide a space in the neighborhood where people can feel safe, where people can gather together as community and really try to make an impact in the life of the neighborhood.
That is amazing. I know something like that can make a huge difference because, for example, like probably within 1 or 2 minute drive, from the parish and the school here in San Diego at St. Michael's. I think about a year and a half ago, there was just in the middle of kind of like a gentrification of an area by the school. A collective group of 4 to 5 families, they opened up a coffee shop, and it's been amazing. Like, they've had Christmas events, and every month they have local artists showcase work so that they can sell some of it and just share like their talents, times, and treasure, and all that stuff like that. So having hearing your story of you guys wanting to open that up, and I'm sure it's going to happen and it's going to flourish. That's an amazing thing. That's going to be such an amazing project for your whole community.
Yeah, and it's definitely exciting because I think, living in the generation that we live in, and realizing that a lot of people across the country don't look at church the same way that they did in decades previous to us. I think it's a really unique opportunity for the Catholic Church in the United States to really be thinking about, well, what does it mean for us to be church? And so that doesn't take away from anything, right? Like our sacramental life, our Sunday worship together as communities, our teachings, our beliefs. But it really, I think, gives us this opportunity to be creative about how do we want to even approach what we're doing in our neighborhoods. For us, right around the parish, the majority of people that are around us, aren't Catholic. Something like 80% of the students in our school aren't Catholic. And it really makes us as a parish, for me as pastor, for our staff, to think about, well, what does it mean to pass on the Catholic faith? And what is our Catholic identity about when we're immersed in a place where most of the people around us don't hold that same faith as we do? We're blessed because the people that we serve in the neighborhood and the school, are primarily Christians. So there's a lot for us to have common ground about. But for me, that's what's exciting. Like, as a young person in the church today, serving as a Catholic priest, to really be thinking like, how can we be doing more? And what's the more that God's really calling us to be doing?
Right. Such a great point. That was the, like I must have, had a prayer or something going on from, Sunday Mass when I started on this internet search journey to go find, young priests like who are, have that energy and have that passion, and they're showing that creativity, right? They're leading from the front, either whether they're a pastor or, just a priest who's part of a bigger family, right? In all across the United States. And I said, you know what, I know they're there. And, like my hope is, either a parent or, a young person to this, they can take inspiration in the power of what you've been, what you're doing, and find their own flavor, with their faith to do, to find some sort of service, to say, hey, God's blessed me with, these talents, or these gifts. Well, you know what? I'm, in addition to learning more about myself and learning more about my faith, one of those aspects is going to be, hey, what can I do to give to something bigger than myself? So that is amazing. That is so cool. If I ever travel to Chicago, I'd love to, buy a cup of coffee from that, that coffee shop, when in the near future.
Well, I'll be happy to welcome you at our coffee shop for sure.
That's amazing. And with your school, did you guys, you mentioned you guys have your school. Did you guys also have, graduation finishing up around this time of year as well?
We did. So we've had graduation the 2 previous weekends. So the last weekend in May and the first weekend of June. So our 8th graders graduated first. And then our kindergartners had their graduation more recently. And so I think they're definitely excited to be moving on to the next journey. I think out of the 17 8th graders, 16 of them are going on to Catholic high schools, which is, really exciting for us because I think it shows that we're trying to instill something not only in our scholars, but also in their families about the value that there is in Catholic education. But graduation is always a very exciting time in the life of the parish, especially I think for the kindergarteners, because everything for them is just a lot of fun and exciting. They get to dress up, and their parents go way out of their way to make sure that their hair looks good, their clothes are perfect, that balloons and flowers and everybody in the family and the neighborhood shows up at the graduation. So it's just really exciting. I think it just kind of gives that life that the parish needs every once in a while to be reminded of, like the good things that we're doing for the youth in our community.
That's cool. And, is there a, like for this academic year in the 8th grade class, either with like one individual or like a group of them or the whole class, is there like a memory or a great story for this particular year's 8th grade graduating class that's kind of like their signature that you keep in your heart that's memorable to you? Is there a story or anything that comes to mind?
I think that there's the 8th grade retreat that we do every year is really impactful for me. And so one of our staff people, Dr. Mark Nemo, leads the 8th grade retreats. And this year we went off site so that the kids could have an experience of being somewhere other than, here at the parish. But the way that they open up on retreat, the ways that they think about, who God is in their life and what God's calling them to, but then also the fact that they can be in a space where they can be honest about things that are going on in their family or things that are going on in the neighborhoods that they come from, I think is really powerful. And we do a thing kind of like probably a lot of people do for like Kairos retreats, where we have parents and family members and myself, we write letters to the students. And so it comes as a surprise at the end of the retreat that their parents and stuff have written these letters of encouragement and support to them. So it's always really cool to watch them kind of go off in the different places at the retreat center and sit there with their letters and really read, and then hear the reflections that they offer from them. Just as simple as, I didn't know that that's what they were thinking, or I didn't realize how proud that my parents were, or funny stories that their parents remind them of in the letters. So that's always exciting because it comes at the end of the year. It comes at the end of their experience in our school community. And it just reminds me of how much they've grown. And for this 8th grade class, a lot of them I met when they were in 3rd grade. So to be able to journey with them as their pastor and to watch them grow up and watch them mature and really become strong leaders in our community is really exciting. So I'm realizing that more and more each year, the longer I'm serving as pastor here, that I've been a part of these students' lives and they've been a part of my life for a while now. And so we've all seen each other grow and change and experience things together as a community. And one of our students, her brother was killed a year ago because of he was involved in an officer-involved shooting here in Chicago, and he lost his life. Other students who have struggled with different things going on in their families. And yet, when we gather together for that retreat, all that stuff comes together, but it's all around like the hope about what comes next, this next chapter in their life. I just think it's really good as an adult, as a priest, to be reminded of that, to be reminded of how much our students carry with them every day, but also how much they're capable of doing in our world.
That's really impactful. That's one of those things where I think it's a universal message that if any parent or any graduating 8th grader, congratulations to our 8th graders who are going to be, graduating in this weekend as well, that they can always reflect back on, our conversation, these words of wisdom, and putting, reflecting and putting themselves maybe in a different location rather than, just the comfort of, San Diego or where they're at, and understanding that they can carry a lot of hope and impact as a future leader where they're anchored in their faith to kind of, get them through that journey throughout their whole life. So such an amazing, is there, like anything that you have going on, because this podcast and the posts that come from it are going to spread throughout the whole country. is there anything that we as the Catholic, faith can, brothers and sisters in Christ, is there anything that we can do to, help you with any like, events going on, or, like let us know more about what you guys are doing? What can we do to help you guys?
We always ask, the first thing is, to pray for our ministries here at St. Columbanus and at Tolton Academy, because we very much believe that prayer changes things. And we know that when we have a lot of people praying for us and a lot of people that are supporting us spiritually in our ministries, great things are possible. I always invite people, if you're ever in Chicago and you're looking for a parish on Sunday mornings, to visit us at St. Columbanus. I mean, we're a dynamic Black Catholic parish here in Chicago that, we have great worship, a great choir. I think I'm a really good preacher, so you'd get a good word if you came on a Sunday morning. So really just to visit us and see what we're doing. And then just to help us spread the word. I really think that, like I said earlier, there's so much negativity out there and so many headlines about what's happening in Chicago. And sometimes those things are true and the violence is true. But there's so many more positive and powerful things that are happening in Chicago right now that even just learning about something that we're doing as a parish really, I think, helps change people's narrative about the city of Chicago and what's happening right now. Cardinal Cupich often says that just because we can't do everything doesn't mean we shouldn't do something. And, we've really taken that to heart here at St. Columbanus. I mean, we can't change everything that's happening in the city or everything that's happening in our country. But what we can do is we can do something right here in Park Manor. And I think that's a great lesson for everyone, like you said, all across the country, whoever's listening to this podcast, to be reminded that because of your faith, you can do something to make a difference in our world. And I think when all of us are doing something and trying to follow what Pope Francis is calling us to, trying to follow, some of what we desire to be doing with our gifts and talents, we can really change things. So definitely pray for us, visit us, learn more about us.
Amazing. Well, to all of our listeners, to all of our new listeners, to our existing listeners, and to everybody who, comes in contact with Father Matt's energy, faith, passion, and just sheer, driven force to give and to serve. I want to commend you on that, and I want to thank everyone for their attention and listening to this episode. That concludes another episode of the SMA Audio Experience Podcast. We're going to go ahead and link, all the website and the notes, for Father Matt's Parish, St. Columbanus, in the show notes of the episode. Hear us on next week, where we have another dynamic guest making a change in their community. God bless, and take care for now. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the SMA Audio Experience Podcast, brought to you by St. Michael San Diego's Technology and Social Media team. For more information, go ahead and visit our website at www.smasandiego.org. On Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, we use the common handle or username of SMA San Diego. So you can definitely reach out to us there, leave a tweet, a message, a post, a comment. We'll be happy to engage with you, answer all your questions, and really join in part of sharing the St. Michael San Diego story on social media and on the internet, and also via the podcast. So thanks again for listening. Take care, and we'll hear you next week.